You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half of the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Hey everybody, welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is John Eichberger with the Fuels Institute and NACS, and I am joined by my co-host,
Chris Blasinsky with NACS.
And today we're going to take a look at what's going on in Washington, D.C. It's 2021. There's a new administration in town. There's a new Congress in town. And NACS is at the forefront of fighting for the industry, making sure that it is represented well up on Capitol Hill and before the administration. So we're joined today by two of the top lobbyists at NACS, John Taets and Paige Anderson. And we're going to talk about the issues that are going to affect your business and your markets going forward in the next 12 to 48 months. Paige, John, welcome to Convenience Matters. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John and Chris.
So I'm going to start off with a pretty easy question, I think, and we'll start with John and then Paige, have you come in right after him. I'm a convenience retailer, and I'm looking at Washington, D.C., and I'm thinking, scratching my head, going, man, everything is so different than it was just a month ago. What do I need to be really paying attention to? What is the top of your agenda for the next 12 months, John, that NACS is going to be making sure that I, as a member of NACS and the industry, is being well represented?
There's going to be a lot to keep an eye on. I'll hand this over to Paige in a minute to talk about the climate change stuff that is going to be really driving under everything they do. But I do expect we'll see a lot of action from the Department of Labor in particular on a lot of the rules that the Trump administration had adjusted, made final in the last year and a half, like the joint employer rule and the overtime rule in particular. And then we're going to have to be paying a lot of attention to some little known congressional procedures called Reconciliation and Congressional Review Act on what they can do there to move things through very narrow majorities without needing to get 60 votes in the Senate. And that will include a lot of tax policy. So that's going to keep me pretty busy for a while. But let me hand it over to Paige real quick to chat about the climate stuff that's really going to be underlying all of this.
Thanks, John. I mean, obviously, climate, energy, environmental policy, really climate's going to permeate the entire regulatory and legislative agenda. We're going to see climate issues pop up in areas we never thought you would. I mean, it could be a defense bill. It could be an intelligence bill, in addition to the traditional highway and infrastructure bills. I mean, we've already seen day one of President Biden's administration issue 2 executive orders in this space regarding Keystone Pipeline and, returning to the Paris Accords on climate change. So really climate is, pardon the pun, the hot topic. But, the reality is COVID-related issues, whether it's a stimulus bill, is going to also dominate, and how, we continue to handle ourselves in the pandemic, vaccination policy, liability, all of these issues are going to definitely be the first 100 days. A lot of time is going to be spent on them.
So with that comment on climate, what do we expect to see kind of being rolling out to address carbon emissions and address climate change that would have a direct impact on the convenience industry?
The sort of low-hanging fruit that's we're going to see right off the bat has to do with electric vehicles. President Biden has said he wants over 500,000 electric vehicle chargers put into the system. And he has a lot of authority to be able to encourage that. And then you have Congress, both the House and Senate, in their various pieces of legislation, want to do a lot in this space. So I think issues surrounding electric vehicles are going to be top of mind. Sort of the first tranche or issue set of that really has to do with incentives programs. So tax credits, rebates, grants, those types of programs. You could see the Biden administration be able to say existing programs at the Department of Transportation, Energy, and Agriculture, taking existing programs and either more aggressively pushing out EV related funding to encourage, to meet their goals, or if there's not sort of an EV component, they can expand it to include EVs. On the congressional side, definitely a highway and infrastructure bill is a top priority, and we're going to see action in the spring and summer on that. Last year, we saw several EV-related proposals in that bill, and we're going to see those same programs, but we're also going to see a lot more. In particular, the Alternative Fuels Corridor Grants Program was included in both the House and Senate bills. And the one thing that NACS worked on that's important for the convenience industry is we want to make sure that fuel retailers, convenience retailers have access to any of those incentives programs so that if they want to put in EV charging infrastructure at their sites, they have access to those incentives and investment programs.
So it sounds like there could be some opportunities there for the industry to take advantage of it. And, when I think about the climate things, it's, they're setting in motion things for long term. And I think that there's always an opportunity for the industry to see the road ahead of them and follow it down the path and make choices, business strategy. But John, in another area, there's a lever that government has that has immediate impact on business. And that's in the form of tax policy. And clearly, President Biden's approach to tax policy is markedly different from his predecessor. What are you guys looking at in terms of pocketbook issues from this new administration and Congress?
In the tax space, sadly, I have to say pretty much, everything and anything. And as I talked about, they're going to be able to move a package that involves tax policy, probably won't be until the summer if they use the reconciliation process, which I think they're going to have to, because they're not going to have 60 votes in the Senate to do much in the tax space, but they don't need it. So if they get to this process, we're going to see them raising taxes on high earning individuals. Anyone earning taxes over $400,000 a year is a level that Biden talked about during the campaign, where he would push anyone over that amount back up to the 39.6 rate they had before the 2017 law came into play. So we'll see that. We'll see, and that will impact a lot of our industry in the fact that a lot of our guys are pass-through entities. So they get taxed on that individual rate. So that's going to be something to keep a very close eye on. They may also try and phase out what's called the 199A deduction, which is, for shorthand version, the way that pass-throughs tax rates get dropped down closer to the corporate rate after the 2017 tax law. They want to phase that out at that same $400,000 level. So that could make things pretty difficult on a lot of people. C-Corps will not be held harmless out of this either. They expect that they will push that number back up probably to 28%. I was saying that Janet Yellen said during her confirmation hearing the other day that she wants to see that number stay below the old rate before 2017, but 28% is below that, yet a significant increase of where they're at now. I'll throw one somewhat positive thing, even though it's not going to outweigh the rest of this, and that is one thing they're very likely to do is get rid of the state and local tax deduction cap that was put in place in the 2017 law at $10,000. That would make it much easier on pass-through businesses to deduct different state and local taxes from their federal taxes that they have limit on right now.
So real quick, guys, I know I love the policy discussion. Sometimes I feel like maybe that was missed a little bit during the debates that we sat through this past year. But you guys are those are things you're looking at too, but there's also, lots of new faces in Congress, lots of new staff to get to know. You guys, usually in a non-pandemic world are up on the Hill all the time trying to, connect with new people and get NACS's name out there and let folks know that we're here for them and however we can help build relationships. You can't do that right now, right? Like things are different. So what is your game plan to kind of make those connections, with the new Congress and kind of?
Well, Chris, that's a great question. You're right. It is more difficult because you can't do the in-person meetings. However, we're fortunate enough that a lot of these new incoming members of Congress and senators, they want to have experienced fundraisers. They want to have experienced legislative staff. And so those long-term relationships that we've been building, from day one, while we may have gotten to know a staffer who worked for one congressman, in order to move up the food chain and get a promotion, they move into a new freshman office. And so it's really leveraging those long-term relationships with staff that's really helped us get our foot in the door and establish those virtual meetings with these new members of Congress. So both John and I and our colleagues, Anna and Lyle and the GR team, we've been spending a lot of time doing those quick one-on-one virtual Zoom meetings with this incoming freshman class and certainly with their staff. So it's just a little bit of a different format, but it's all about leveraging the relationships we have. And our membership has a lot of great relationships with these incoming members. And so utilizing those retailers that maybe knew some of these incoming members of Congress when they were in the state legislature or maybe were on the city council. So being able to maximize, all of those relationships is what it's about. And we've been pretty effective on it.
Yeah, I'm like Chris said, policy is my primary focus, my primary interest, and my primary love. Yet policy,
I'm trying really hard not to get you too riled up. Right? I'm waiting for you to unleash the fury, but
well, luckily there's a mute button that I can use.
I know.
But you can't have policy devoid of politics, unfortunately. And the mess of Washington, D.C. over the last several months and the dysfunction of our political processes in terms of facilitating dialogue and discussion and constructive engagement. It's the top focus of a lot of people in the country is where are we and what is going to happen going forward? John, we'll start with you, but Chris and I were on Capitol Hill a long time ago. I'm not going to say how long ago because I don't, you never want to talk about a woman's age. But it was a long time ago.
Okay, it's not that long. Jeez.
Well, let's put it this way. We still use typewriters now. But even
we
back
did not have
then,
cell phones, okay?
Yeah, that's true.
Fair?
We didn't have
a typewriter on Capitol Hill, and you know what? I'm proud of it.
We weren't legislating by Twitter. How's that? But even back then, it was, we thought it was dysfunctional. People were fighting. But by comparison, man, it was the most civil, collegial environment you can imagine compared to today. I mean, John, is there an opportunity in the aftermath of the turmoil at the end of 2020 for our elected leaders to work together for the common good? Or are we already in the throes of the 2022 midterm elections?
Well, we're always in the throes of a midterm or regular election. That never seems to go away. But I do think there is some opportunity. And strangely enough, I think the fact that we have a Senate that is evenly divided, 50-50, giving the Democrats the narrowest majorities possible because of Vice President Harris's tie-breaking vote, they're going to need to come to some levels of agreement there. They can push certain things through under certain procedures, but it's going to be fairly limited on what they can do. Now, the last time we were in this situation was after another contentious presidential election in 2000. And we started off 2001 with a Senate at 50-50. And at that time, the Republican leader and the Democratic leader were able to get together and come up with a rough power sharing agreement where Senator Lott was, a Republican, was the majority leader and Senator Daschle was the Democrat leader and the minority leader. But committees were split 50-50. Which makes things a little trickier to push some stuff through. And Senator Daschle had some limited ability to move things to the floor, depending on what we want to do. So there are opportunities there where we're going to have to see if Schumer and McConnell, and this seems strange to say, can get along and find a way to make it work.
I view them as the two Muppets up in the balcony complaining about the Muppet Show.
Then don't watch the Muppet Show.
Yeah. I mean, they've been meeting, they've been talking for the past couple of weeks on how to set up a similar power sharing agreement basing on that 2001 setup. Now, we don't have that yet, but I think we're going to have some real opportunities there to see some bipartisanship happening. If the Senate's going to function, it's going to have to work that way. On the House side, you're going to see, I think, we're seeing it towards the end of last Congress, kind of an increase in the importance and the authority of, say, groups like the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is a group of, I think it's around 50 members. I think they're increasing it, but it's evenly divided between Republicans and Democrats, kind of modest on both sides, to try and come together and make some kind of agreement that would make sense. They really spurred things along and really got the stimulus conversation going again, which is why we ended up with a stimulus bill towards the end of last Congress. So you'll see groups like the Blue Dog Democrats in particular, even though there aren't that many of them left, are going to have a
There's
pretty...
two, right?
There's a few more than that, but not a lot, because the Democrats in the House have the narrowest majority they've had since, I think, World War II. There's very little margin for error there on making sure that they get to the 218, 217, depending on how many are in Congress right now, votes they need. So I think the fact that you'll see moderates having some more influence over there, and maybe I should knock on wood when I say that, but I think that provides a lot of these opportunities as well, because those are folks that get together personally a lot and know each other better.
Let me point out something, and Paige, you can opine on this. John, you mentioned Senator Lott and Senator Daschle, and by comparison to our current top leaders, they were the most eloquent of statesmen. But they were also John, you're referring to 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Paige.
Okay, that's when I worked on the Hill. Fine.
I had just left the Hill. But I mean, I'm struggling because I'm just dumbfounded by what we're dealing with. Is it possible that these leaders who have been taking shotguns to knife fights and nuclear arsenal to knife fights to put down their weapons and actually come together and try to work together, or are the bruises just too deep?
So, John, I'm a born optimist, and I've spent...
I still don't know how we get along, but I understand that.
I know. I'm the yin to your yang, but the short answer is I think we need a cooling off period. We have always had extremes in both parties that are very loud, that get the attention in social media, that get the attention on the news. And, the first thing is people stay off your social media and don't go down the crazy rabbit holes. And I think if you really are looking at, as John mentioned, there are more and more of these, I don't want to say moderate politically, more moderate in their tone and in their actions and their civility on both sides of the aisle, who do want to get stuff done. And I think if you look at these younger members who were elected last Congress and this freshman class, these are very serious, folks who want to do the right thing for their constituents, that want to get something done and are adult to know, hey, you don't always get everything that you want. So while, yes, there's going to be some posturing, yes, it's more sexy to have a story on, the conflict. And, there are some members who are genuinely, upset about what has transpired in the last, couple of weeks, particularly in Congress. And, just like we do in real day life, it may take a few weeks, a few months to get back into, to get over those emotions. But, people do want to get something done. And I think, it's the time with the new administration, and say whatever you want, political party, whatever, if President Biden operates the way he did as senator, he was very civil and he had a lot of respect in both sides of the aisle. He believed in the institution and the process. And he also knew, hey, you're not going to get everything that you want, and was a very good negotiator. And I think if he brings those skills from when he was in the Senate to the White House, I think we can be hopeful. Not that a ton is going to get done, but I think we do have some opportunities.
I don't know if I'm quite as optimistic as Paige, but to build on some good points she was making, if you look back at the Obama administration when Biden was vice president, pretty much any time, for the most part, that the Obama administration was able to cut a deal with the Republicans in Congress, it was Joe Biden talking to Mitch McConnell. And if they can keep that relationship going, I think that'll go a long way to do this. I also think that, Chuck Schumer's favorite place to be is in front of a camera, but his second favorite place to be is cutting a deal. And he had that reputation before he became leader, and he may have gotten away from that a little bit over the last few years, but I think that's at his core what he's going to want to do. And I think if you put all those relationships together, I think there is the possibility of them actually getting some stuff done. Again, like Paige said, it's not going to be a lot, but I think the big stuff they need to get done, I think they're going to find a way to do it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and now I'm feeling uncomfortable because I'm starting to feel some optimism for civility. And man,
we can't let that happen, John. Maybe we can try something else.
Can we talk about Keystone XL again?
Only if you have curse words to go along with it.
Well, guys, it's going to be a wild ride, and I told Paige yesterday that the words, and there's a soundtrack going on in my head. If you've ever been to Disneyland and gone to Big Thunder Mountain, the safety message goes, hang on to the hats and glasses because this here's the wildest ride in the West. And I got to tell you, I'm geared for a wild ride, whether it be constructive and collaborative at the federal level or not. But I think the policies and I think the complete opposite track that we've seen the last 4 years in terms of what the objectives are and what the policy motivations are and how they go about doing it. I think it's going to be fast. I think it's going to be furious. And I think we're all going to have to stay on our toes. And from the Fuels Institute side, we're going to do everything we can to provide as much objective input and perspective to help guide those discussions to be pragmatic and pro-consumer. Obviously, from NACS side, you got to be looking out over your shoulder all the time for what's coming at the convenience industry itself. But it's going to be, hopefully, it will be a civil process, but it is going to be a bumpy road, in my opinion.
My favorite quote, John, is from Betty Davis in the movie All About Eve, where she says, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride, boys. And I concur. It is going to be a bumpy ride.
Well, I saw something today. I'm getting a little off track here, wrapping up here, but that it was a post saying, and the liberal comedians are filing for bankruptcy in 3, 2, 1, because I don't know who they're going to be picking on anymore.
They'll have plenty of targets.
I'm sure they will. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us on Convenience Matters. You guys got a lot of work to do. And, those of you listening out there, if you want to get involved in helping NACS represent the industry, Paige, how can they get involved?
Well, the first thing they can do is look at the website, and we put lots of grassroots campaigns, and we have lots of information on how they can engage with their members of Congress. So you can email John or myself. I'm at p.anderson@convenience.org. And John, you want to share your email address?
Sure. It's jtaets, so JTAETS @convenience.org as well.
And we will connect you to who you need to be connected with, and we make it a lot of fun. So please engage.
Absolutely. So before we send you guys off on your way, just a quick note: we have a favor from our listeners. We want to hear from them. We want to hear from you. We want to know what topics you want we haven't touched on or want to hear us touch on it again. If you go to conveniencematters.com, there's a very quick survey, and just let us know how we're doing. And our colleague Carolyn's going to send you a really cool sticker. So there you go. You get something out of it.
Well, everybody, thanks for listening in. And I'm going to end on a note of positivity. I'm going to quote Casey Kasem: keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.